On today's podcast, we're beginning a series about the role trust plays in leadership, developing teams, and compelling cultures in the world today. This stat just jumped out to me. Recent 2024 Gallup research across organizations, only 23% of employees said they strongly agree that they trust the leadership of their team and organization and the direction that their organization is heading. Today, we'll be talking about the decision to trust. The decision to trust.
Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today, welcome in. So glad you are here. So glad that we are continuing to connect this way. We are in Season 8. Hard to believe, Season 8 and well over 220-ish episodes, something like that, which is crazy. But thank you to everyone out there. Thank you to everybody who's taking some time out of your day, out of your week, your month to be a part of today's podcast. Thank you to the OGs, those of you out there that have been listening to this podcast from day one, and anybody who's new to the podcast, welcome in. So glad you're here and hope it continues or will add value and contribute to your life, your work, the way that you're thinking about, the temperature that you're trying to set in your life, your work, and with those around you. So glad you're here. My commitment to you, as always, is that I want this to be a place that helps you step back, breathe some good oxygen into you, and help you, again, think about the people that you're trying to lead, the mission of your team, your family, your work, whatever that is for you, but to be a thermostat and to think about that. Before we dive into today's topic, if you will do me the quick favor and rate the podcast 5 stars, of course. I hate that I, have to ask this each time, but again, keep being reminded that you have to do that. So if you would, rate the podcast 5 stars. That's a huge deal, super important, very helpful. So on whatever platform you're listening to, rate it 5 stars. If you can leave an authentic review, your own authentic words about the podcast, episodes that mean something to you, those are ways the algorithms work and help share the messages further with more people. So thanks for everybody that takes the time to do that. And then also anybody who shares the podcast, like on social media, or hey, send it through your team or the people at work or your network and said, hey, here's a topic that resonated with me. Here's, we ought to get together and talk about it. Maybe the questions at the end of the podcast were helpful. Anytime you share this podcast, that's the way that it spreads and amplify these messages further in the world. So thanks to everybody that takes the time to do that. Thank you. So trust continues to be a topic within teams and organizations that continues to come to the surface. Every team, every organization that I work with, the word trust, of course, we know trust is foundational to every healthy culture. We know in dysfunctional cultures, oftentimes the bottom part of reason why it begins to become dysfunctional is there's a lack of trust. So trust continues to be a topic within teams and organizations that comes to the surface in any of my work with leadership development, with culture shaping, and that clarity around mission, vision, and values for teams. So not only that, but recent 2024 research from Gallup just came out, and this stat just jumped out to me. Recent 2024 Gallup research across organizations, only 23% of employees said they strongly agree that they trust the leadership of their team and organization and the direction that their organization is heading. Only 23% of employees said that they trust the leadership and the future direction that their organization is heading. So I hear that, and I see a massive opportunity to be a differentiator in the market, whatever it is you do, but certainly to be a differentiator that we've just got to be better than that. We can do better for humans in the world to build our level of trust. So there's a massive opportunity to be a differentiator by creating an authentic culture where trust is the foundation and it is continuously developed. And we know that many of the leaders, teams, and organizations, I know this, that I support, recognize the importance of raising the level of trust within their teams and earning the trust of their teammates. And as the leader, you want people to trust you. You don't want to be a part of that statistic. You want your people to trust you, and that you want them to trust where your team is heading, where your organization is heading. But as you know, trust isn't as simple as just blindly trusting. Great cultures build trust within their teams and recognize when opportunities to, arise to develop that trust. So, on today's podcast, we're beginning a series about the role trust plays in leadership, developing teams, and compelling cultures in the world today. Today, we'll be talking about the decision to trust. The decision to trust. But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. If you listened to my podcast a while back titled, Why is Trusting the Process So Hard? If you didn't hear that episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. But if you did hear it, then you'll remember a few key elements that will help us begin this conversation about trust. Again, I won't go through that whole episode. I would really encourage you to go back and listen. We throw around that phrase, trust the process, but if we feel like there's some hesitancy with the people around us or on our team or throughout your organization or your family or whatever that may be, then you might want to go back and listen to that episode because there's some elements of why it's not so easy to just blindly trust the process. So I'll just highlight a couple things real quick. This isn't the entire episode, but just a couple of things to carry forward into our conversation today about the beginning, the decision to trust. But one thing that I'll point out is trust is not automatic. We as humans, we don't just hand out trust on the regular. Trust doesn't just magically happen. In fact, we know that trust is bartered back and forth every single day with the people around us. With some, the trust, market, if you will, goes up and down on the day or a situation. And sometimes it seems quite volatile because we don't always know what we're going to get with somebody. And with others, the value or that investment, that bartering that takes place is accrued over time, and the investment based on the small little barters and behaviors with a relationship that, builds up value over the long haul. And so we first make a choice as to whether we want to, barter in any of that trust and begin the relationship with somebody. But that trust is not automatic. It's going to be bartered back and forth over time. And we're going to focus today on kind of the decision of trust in just a moment. But the second element of our hesitancy to trust the process is that, oftentimes we don't always understand what the quote-unquote process is. What is the plan? We don't understand in good faith what the process actually is. And if we don't know or don't understand the process, the ideology, the approach, the philosophy, the game plan, then we shouldn't just blindly trust the process. We need to understand the high-level approach and then hopefully have built up enough trust in the leader over time to trust them to lead others and to activate the plan. We're going to dive into that element of why does our trust kind of wobble with people in the upcoming episodes, the next few episodes after this one. And then the last one that I'll just point out real quick, the last element of our hesitancy or inability to trust the process is that the process will take time. And we must be patient. We must follow the steps, the plan, actually give the process time to work. But we know we live in a fast food world, an instantaneous world of communication, instantaneous culture that we live in. And so giving things time is difficult for most people. And the process only works if we honor the fact that it will take time. It won't happen overnight. The process will require trust, time, and discipline. And so I often remind us of the 6A process for leading change, my framework around change theory that I talk about often, that we've got to be willing to go through that process of assessing, of aligning, of aspiring, of articulating, of acting, and anchoring. We can't just skip to the end. We have to go through the process. So we're building off of all of those elements today for the series ahead. And we first need to be reminded that trust first begins with the decision to trust, the decision or mindset that we are willing to move outside of our own comfort zone and extend an opportunity to someone else. If not, we'll stay trapped right where we are, and it's easy for us to go through our lives not trusting anyone and staying right within our comfort zone. But we also know that's not realistic. So I do believe that the beginning of a trusting relationship is the choice to enter into that journey with someone else. And certainly when we join a team, we make a choice. Are we going to begin to go on that journey together? And certainly we know part of that process that's going to come is everyone within the team opening themselves up and allowing trust to develop between each of the people. And as we know, it isn't just the choice that will prove whether it's a trusting relationship. That will occur over time as we barter back and forth and invest in that relationship by showing up in the ways that we say we will for one another. And when we do, the trust goes up. And when we don't, the trust goes down. It's like a bank account that we make either investments in the social equity of that relationship, or it gets withdrawn and the equity drops. But it does begin with that choice. And we also know that there are also many situational factors that impact our decision to trust. These aren't the only situational factors that I'm going to highlight here in just a second, but I want to focus on a few main ones and where these came from. So there was a great Harvard Business Review article around the research from Professor Robert F. Hurley. And so I'm going to share some of his insights, but also on these kind of situational factors that research have identified of why we make, what situational factors come into play when we make a decision to trust. But I'm also going to add in my observations and my thoughts based on the teams and organizations that I serve. So the first situational factor that impacts our decision to trust and that choice the choosing of trusting somebody is around security. And clearly, we know that part of that is we like to be safe and we like to stay right where we are. Clearly, not all risks are equal when we make the choice to trust someone. But a general rule to remember is the higher the stakes, the less likely people are to trust. And so everyone questions their own security when deciding whether they're going to trust or whether they're not. And so a situational factor that we all face when we're making that decision of whether we're going to trust somebody or trust a team is, do we feel safe? Are we secure? Am I going to get kicked off this team quickly? Am I going to be fired? If it doesn't feel like a safe environment, it's hard for me to feel a level of security. And so part of that situational factor that begins that decision to choose is, do I feel safe and secure? The other situational factor that I'll highlight is around similarities. And this shouldn't be a surprise to either, but we often look around teams and groups and we look for where it is that we can see ourselves in other people. At the heart of all this, we are still quite tribal beings. We as humans are tribal, which is why people tend to more easily trust those who appear similar to themselves. Similarities may include common values, like a strong work ethic or strong communication or a desire to be honest and be caring with one another. Membership is a defined group. So if you are part of a manufacturing department or a local church, or even you may see similarities in a gender, a sexual orientation, there are all kinds of races, you may see similarities there. We're more likely to trust people, research shows, of people that we see ourselves in and see similarities. So if there's an extroverted person and we're extroverted, then we might gravitate towards that. If there's an introverted person, we may gravitate towards that. So in deciding how much to trust someone, people often begin by tallying up their similarities and their differences. And not saying that this is right. And in fact, as we raise our level of awareness and emotional intelligence and become more emotionally intelligent leaders and teams, we're better able to see that, yes, we know we might naturally gravitate towards those similarities, but we also need differences. And we want diversity, and we have an ability to then recognize, hey, I don't just want similarities to make my decision for me of why I decide to trust somebody. We also know that a situational factor that comes into play with our decision to trust and that choice that we make is around alignment of interests. So similar to the similarities, before a person places their trust in someone else, they carefully weigh the question, how likely is this person to serve my interests? Do we have similar, are our interests aligned? Trust is a reasonable response when we feel like we are aligned in our priorities and our interests. Hey, they want what I want. And so, because both, I'll give you an example, because a patient and a surgeon, for instance, benefit from a successful operation, the patient doesn't need to question the surgeon's motives. A fairly unsophisticated leader will assume that everyone in the organization has the same interests. We obviously know that's not true. But in reality, people have both common and unique interests. And a good leader will help others on the team find commonalities and find alignment with each other, even when they value and know that people have differences. And in fact, differences makes us better, but we also want to seek areas of alignment, and that will help our alignment of interests and priorities, and that will help raise the level of trust. The last two situational factors I'll reference for today is one around capability. Obviously, our decision to trust people also comes back to whether or not we perceive they are capable. And so similarities and aligned interests have little meaning if the person that we're looking at, we don't think they are capable. If you're going to have that surgery, you're probably more concerned about your surgeon's technical skills than about how much the two of you have in common. So managers routinely assess capability when deciding to trust or delegate authority to those who work for them. We choose to trust someone based on our gut feelings about their capabilities. Can they actually do what we're asking or what they say they can do? And the last situational factor is the level of communication that people quickly experience. Because trust is a relational concept, good communication is critical. And not surprisingly, open and honest communication tends to support the decision to trust, whereas poor or no communication creates suspicion. And many, organizations fall into that downward spiral, which is miscommunication causes employees to feel betrayed, which leads to a greater breakdown in communication and eventually outright distrust. So people watch the way that we communicate and make decisions based on their gut of whether transparency and honesty might exist as we move forward. So trust begins with a decision, and certainly there are all of these situational factors, the situational factor of security, of similarities, of alignment of interests, of capability, and of the level of communication. Those are just a few of the main situational factors that get in our way, but trust begins with a decision. And on the next few episodes of this series, I'm going to focus on where our trust tends to wobble, both individually and as teams, plus look at some of what we'd call the trust musts for every leader and team to keep in mind to build it within their teams. So, as always, let me leave you with a couple of questions to ponder. What situational factors are most important to you? And when you are deciding to trust somebody, is it security, similarities, alignment of interests, capability, or level of communication? Which of those situational factors are most important to you when you're deciding to trust someone? And is there someone on your team that you haven't fully chosen to trust yet? And if so, what's getting in the way? So I hope today's episode got you thinking in some good ways. Hope it added to this idea of trust. I'm excited about the series we have ahead of us, and we'll keep building on these concepts. Lastly, I hope you'll go back and listen to past episodes. So many great topics and things out there. If you have any thoughts or feedback for us, as always, you can reach out and send us an email, info@jasonvbarger.com, info@jasonvbarger.com. Cheers to you on the path ahead, and remember that the future of leadership and creating compelling cultures is you, is me, is us, and we've got to be the thermostats. We got to be folks that are willing to shape what it is that we want in the future with the people around us and be differentiators in the market for how we can build levels of trust and care for people and lead and create compelling cultures that people actually want to be a part of. And oh, by the way, it will also lead to all the other metrics that will make you better at whatever it is that you do. So, cheers to everybody on the path ahead. I hope you will continue to dive in and be a part of these podcasts in the future and share it with the people around you. Step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.